Hi. Wow, 100 subscribers. That's a milestone I didn't know if I was ever going to reach. So that's cool. I know this is going to be a longer video as is, so I'm just going to jump right into it. This is the first chapter of my story, Rituals and Red Tape. I've been writing this on and off for past couple years. Long story short, it started because I was in between jobs and I needed to distract myself. Kind of genre-wise, I would describe the story as dark fantasy with some mundane horror, and not intentionally, but there is some dark comedy moments. Yeah, I've also been told by people who've read it before that kind of the vibe they get from it is The Office, I assume the American one, mixed with H.P. Lovecraft, which may not become apparent in this first chapter, but in other chapters, yeah. I'm noticing I'm starting to ramble, and yeah. Down below in the description, I should have provided a link to the Wattpad if you want to read along. This is going to be a bit more of I don't want to say not as high of a production value as the Kellogg's, but definitely a lot more casual. You might hear my chair squeaking a little bit. I'll do my best to remove those, but yeah, just a nice, chill vibe as I read to you the first chapter of Rituals and Red Tape. And once again, thank you so much for 100 subscribers. Let's get into it. Hot asphalt, pungent salt, and salt-baked sand. The first things to tickle my senses and jumpstart my mind. Opening my eyes, I was at first blinded, but soon I beheld before me a landscape familiar, yet foreign in some indiscernible manner. A thought nagged at the back of my mind, a feeling of uncertainty and unease. This thought had only existed for a moment before the panic crashed over me. I was no longer at home, let alone in my bed. A heavy weight pressed against my chest as my mind raced. How was this possible? My last memory, before this sudden displacement, was the humming of an electric fan, the soft caress of a hand-sewn blanket, and the cradle of the perfect pillow. Now, I stood alone under a high sun with a damp wind wrapping around me like a serpent. I closed my eyes once more, inhaling and exhaling to a slow beat. Calm down. Once my pulse and mind had slowed, I let out a final long breath and braced myself against the uncertainty of what could come next. 1, 2, 3. My eyes remained shut. Shaking my head as if to dislodge a trapped action, I counted to 3 again and flung them open. Sunlight, not moonlight, welcomed me back. Okay, think. One moment I was in my room, in my bed, and safe. Now, I'm not. I don't know where I really am, but I know I didn't walk myself outside into the middle of nowhere, during high noon no less. At least, I'm almost sure. Now, there is the crazy idea I somehow got up and have been walking all night and into the day. Or I am dreaming. I considered both. The answer was easy. I'm dreaming. Not only that, but I am lucid dreaming. Satisfied and embracing the cognitive dissonance, I surveyed my new environment. Now, where am I? I was standing in the middle of a road, not a great place to suddenly find yourself in most situations. More accurately, I was at the top of a tall hill that descended sharply at first, then lazily flattened out. At the far end of this road was what I could only guess as a coastal town. The buildings lacked any defining features at this distance, but their blocky proportions were unmistakable. The water of the bay seemed off. It was at once the deep rich blue of the open sea and the vibrant teal of the more shallow coast. The colors were shifting and existing on top of and next to each other as they were churned by an unknowable current. To my sides were dense forest, the trees towering so high that they threatened to pierce the sky and so densely packed that the land below their limbs was as dark as a moonless midnight. In an attempt to get a better view of the trees, I took a step back, but found myself stopped. It was as if I had just backed into a brick wall. Turning to see what I had even ran into, I only saw the same stretch of road down to the same town. I guess it makes things a bit easier. Only one way forward. So, no choice really but to go into town. The walk to town was quicker than the distance had implied. I chalked it up to dream logic. As I made my way through the streets, I couldn't help but feel an isolation. Where one would expect to see cars parked on the side of the road, they lay vacant. Items in stores were not neatly arranged on the shelves, decorations were placed lovingly in home windows and upon doorways and garages, and garbage was tucked away in shiny metal cans. Things were disorderly, but in a way that suggested life and not stagnation of neglect or the chaos of a panicked exodus. Yet, around me was just nothing. My brain had the ability to create all of this, but it couldn't fill it with anyone. The buzz of cicadas was one of the few companions I did have during my walk. Their songs echoed out from the inky blackness of the woods and breathed some sense of life. While vacant, the ghost of life lingered in the smells of the town and bay area. Thankfully, my drain had opted for a more pleasant experience. Crisp, salty gusts of wind mingled with the smell of deep-fried fish, who also shared the space with the powerful presence of pine and oak. Passing by storefronts exposed me to the aromas of freshly made fudge, the smoke of a beef patty sizzling on a grill, and the sharp notes of citrus desserts. It was like being the only person in a theme park, left behind after the gates have closed. Smiling, I found myself on the pier. Thick planks of wood, weathered by sea and sand, held me above the tide. Waves breaking along stones whispered the song of the ocean to the town. The distant call of shorebirds echoed amongst the brick and mortar empty shells. I leaned against the railing and just took it all in. This is freeing. I'm glad I can just be by myself. I know it's all in my head, but I think I'd still feel some kind of need to interact realistically if there was, I spun around with arms held wide as if gesturing to an audience of the absolute solitude I had. Anyone else. I mean, look at me. In a place where I theoretically have unlimited control and power, and I'm still acting like a dweeb. I'm alright with that, though. It's nice to just be me for a moment. With a hearty sigh, I found myself a bench to take a seat and continued to take in the peace. As I indulged in some healthy isolation, a new sound broke through the choir of nature. A bell. A small, polite charm. Like something that would hang above a door and call out when company had arrived. It was then I spotted something that had not been there before. A store on the pier. The sign read, Crab Shack Treasure, in what could be described as pirate font. The building's exterior was fashioned after a treasure chest. The single large window was decorated with a fishing net stretched from corner to corner, both inside and out. In this net were small plastic sea creatures. You've got to be joking. Am I really dreaming of a gift shop? A laugh escapes me as I stand and made my way inside. As I passed the threshold, I attempted to call out. I doubted there was a soul here, but I did anyway. At least, I had intended to. No sound escaped my lips. This was not an issue, though. It was a dream, after all. I blushed in embarrassment a little at the thought of me shouting out, "Hello!" back into the waking world. With a little nugget of shame, I closed the door behind me and began to browse the wares. Standard gift shop items were neatly placed on shelves and hung on racks. You had your neon-colored graphic shirts with the store's name and mascot, an elderly fisherman sporting stained blue overalls over a knitted turtleneck, printed in a way to suggest it was faded and worn with time despite the crispness of the fabric. Oh, if only you were real. I browsed along some more and found a similar style shirt, but with the town's name in sharp, unfaded font. The City of Bay Village. I at least now had a name for this town, even if it was kind of lame. Mugs featuring fish, mugs in the shape of fish or crabs, novelty pens, freeze-dried ice cream, and other tourist trap items were the treasures to be found. My eyes were then drawn to a stuffed doll of the store's mascot. I picked it up for a better look and heard the bell ring again. Startled, I turned towards the noise but found nothing new. With a brow furrowed in slight concern, I shook the feeling off and resumed my inspection of the figurine. His overalls were of a fabric close to but not denim. Little brass pins acted as his buttons. The air was getting heavy with humidity, clinging to my skin. His boots were made of that cheap fake leather and had thin strands of thread for the laces. While taking a closer look, I could make out a small name tag, James. The light had dimmed outside and had taken on a stormy green hue. I set the figurine down and my eyes were drawn to a chest freezer. My stomach groaned and howled. Odd. I had never heard of hunger being part of a dream. Who was I to argue, though? Maybe my body was scolding me for going to bed without dinner. Rain had begun to fall, droplets tapping on the window like impatient fingers. Lightning illuminated the dusky store, a thick fog looming over each shelf and clothing rack. My hair stood on end. Something wasn't right. A nightmare? Shutting my eyes, I focused. I was the one in control here, so I would just undo whatever was happening. The last thing I needed was to be stuck in a lucid nightmare. As I pictured the gift shop as it once was, a sharp stench broke my concentration. The smell of rot, of unclean water, of fish left in the afternoon sun. I gagged. Maybe a skunk had passed by my window. That was it, surely. I also reasoned a storm was happening in the waking world. With a sigh and half-hearted chuckle, I followed the siren call of the freezer. The wind outside howled, waves threatening in vain to snap the beams of the dock. In the distance, a siren wailed. I wasn't a fan to hear the siren, unsure if it was part of the world beyond this or merely a dramatic flare. As deep as this dream felt, I was sure if something were to happen, I would be torn from this reality to real life. What was more important at this moment was quelling the beast in me and consuming whatever goodies I could find. Shutting my eyes once more, I attempted to, if not return completely to the dream before, at least get rid of some of the more spooky parts. The world outside, while still dark, was still and quiet. A fog persisted inside, my own breath causing the particles to swirl and dance. There, much better. Or maybe the storm just passed me by. Hopefully my floor isn't too wet. The freezer, adorned with plastic fish and shells, would no longer keep its bounty from me. The lid held fast with ice and pressure fought against me, but it was no match for my determination. Flinging open the lid, a hiss slithered past me as air rushed in. Inside was a captain's feast. Ice cream of numerous flavors, popsicles that shimmered like gems, chocolate bars wrapped in golden foil, and also frozen fillets of fish. I had struck it rich. While ill-advised to subsist on only frozen treats in reality, this of course was not. And those rules be damned. A thunderclap broke the unearthly stillness, and lightning lit up the fog like the sun. Rain crashed against the window in rage. The wind circled around the building and coiled tight like a constrictor. Above all this noise, clear as a pin dropping, a wet dripping. I paid this little mind. Let the nightmare come again. I was the supreme authority here, and it would not interrupt my indulgence. That horrible stench came back, which was upsetting. With a shrug, I closed my eyes and willed it away. It only grew worse, burning my nose and lungs. That dripping was also getting louder. Dream or no dream, nothing is worth this smell. I'm getting out of here. Squinting into the dense cloud around me, I could barely see the shelves I had just passed. Blindly groping my way through the mist, I must have missed the door. Or maybe it was farther down than I had thought. Stumbling into clothing racks, I marched forward. Passing rows and rows of identical shelves, I quickened my pace. You've got to be kidding me. I clenched my jaw and broke into a sprint. Of all the shitty cliches to pull, an infinite expanse has got to be the most annoying. I swear, if I get to the door only to open it and see this exact same inside, I am going to lose it. Making it to the door leading outside, I could see a violent storm raging. Weighing the options, I flung the door open. I was greeted with the inside of the store. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I simply hung my head inside. I trudged through the portal and back into the store. Looking behind me, the door was gone. I was no longer scared, just disappointed. I wonder what the chances of it happening again are. A pretty good chance. I passed through this situation several more times. I slumped to the floor and held my head. I was getting tired of my own dream. How novel. At least that smell wasn't lingering around me anymore, and it looked like the storm had also passed. Surely this meant I was done running through an infinite gift shop. Picking myself up, I shuffled to the entrance for one last time. The sun was shining, the leaves rustled with the breeze, and the bay was calm. I'm not going to think it, I'm not going to say it, I'm just going to open the door. Upon touching the door handle, I instantly found myself outside, which was a welcomed occurrence. Something was different. Something I couldn't place my finger on right away until it hit me like a brick to the back of the head. I was no longer alone. In the distance, a spire. Calling to me? As I made my way forward, I was still baffled by how I could have seemingly missed this humbling monument. Black and white marble, twisting and coiling in on itself, only broken by the void in the very center of the spire that would serve as my entrance. Impossibly tall, my efforts to spy the top were going to be in vain as it extended far beyond my line of sight and perhaps perception itself. Like a parallel line, the sides drew closer and closer as my gaze grew higher and higher, but they would never meet. Time and distance worked differently in this reality. In one moment I could feel the road under my feet, the next, no sensation of touch, and I was suddenly at the base. To my surprise, I could now see the top of this monolith. The sides, however, now walled off all existence from view. Another peculiarity. Deathly silence. A bittersweet reprieve from the deafening noise of the forest. The opening now greeted me, a void of all sensation, beckoning me to draw in deeper. No longer rendering the spire in twain, it was just the right size to grace the top of my head as I gravitated towards it. I am unsure when I breached the threshold. The inside was impossibly small. Well, in comparison to the outer shell. I had expected an expanse beyond the horizon, but what I found was no bigger than the lobby of an upscale hotel. My only source of light was a central altar. Sudden anxiety. I took a step back. I only found myself one step closer. Shocked, I stumbled back, only to stumble forward. All movement would bring me closer and closer to the central altar. I was bound by gravity, and escape was no longer an option. I had wanted this, though. Why was I frightened? Was it by chance because it was too easy? That I was, in essence, invited inside? My time for pondering was cut short as I now stood upon the very precipice of whatever awaited me. Would I cease to exist if I stepped onto the beckoning slab of metal? Would I be forever trapped? A spire within the spire? Whatever the outcome, this last step would be my own. Nothing. Not a damn thing. Then suddenly, a peeling sensation. It was as if my existence where I stood was ripped like Velcro. I felt floaty. I blink. I am no longer within the room. I was in the forest. Without sound or touch, the world just moved. Branches swaying to and fro. Shadows stalking between the trees. Eyes on me. A painting brought to life. Peeling again. An old Victorian home, walls peeling and molding. Where there should be damp air, I smelled nothing. Dust lingering in sunbeams, a calm flow like the first snow. The hardwood flooring bowed and sunk, pools of liquid collecting in urban tide pools. The world felt compressed, ever so slightly. I wonder whose home this could have been, or maybe is. Was I a guest or an intruder? The moments dragged on, highlighted by a cheekily placed grandfather clock. The pendulum barely moved enough to be seen. Resigned, I waited. An empty office building, cubicles empty and dark. This one I recognized. Olive green carpet stretching on for miles, the ceiling hanging just a touch lower than I could recall. I wonder if Greg was somewhere here. Maybe not. A water cooler pressed against a central column bubbled drearily, an amber liquid in place of the water. Almost looked like honey. Black sand and gray sky. Waves silently crashing and breaking on obsidian boulders. A pinprick of light spearing through the heavy fog. I could see creatures moving under the waves and sand. A fin here, a horn there. Looking directly upon a shimmering vista encapsulated me. Deep blue and bright cyan swirled through the gloom. What anxiety I had before was gone. I was on a journey, whether I liked it or not. Comforting is a lack of autonomy in the face of grand opportunity. And I amongst the waves and fog, maybe made of wave and fog, judged my presence. I'm not sure if I was just acceptable or not. I peeled again. Further and further down I traveled. I am unsure how I came to the conclusion of down, but it felt true. With each descent I vacationed to a new realm, each is unique, each alive. As I descended, reality was compressing in upon itself. My view remained the same, but I felt the weight of countless realities pressing down on me. A world of flesh, a world of brass and malachite. Infinite watercolor hills and valleys replaced with a swirling oil. Down and down I went. I fell for what had to be years or decades, or maybe it was only a few seconds. The world heaved a heavy sigh. A blinding expanse of white, countless black obelisks. I was at the bottom, or at least what I thought was the bottom. With trepidation I stepped off the altar that had served as my elevator. My footsteps echoed amongst the impossible nothing. Below me the floor was the black marble of the spire, polished to an impossible mirror finish. Existence mirrored into the bedrock. Where there had been black obelisks, white ones shone great against the black expanse. Unsure what to do next, I just started walking. Passing by obelisks, I could discern writing, but not in any script I could recognize. The words moved and reacted to my presence, swirling and scattering, trying to form words I could recognize. In each monument I saw reflected back at me a figure. Gazing deeply into the murky mirror came an understanding. Reflected back was no stranger but myself, though when I returned my focus to outside the reflection, I found my body absent. A slight moment of panic, but then realization. Like a blind spot in my perception, I had not had a body this entire visit. From the streets above to the crab shack to now. Had I simply imagined an arm here or a hand there? I was aware of sensations. Perhaps in the dream I had no need for anything beyond perception. An illusion, no different than when the mind wanders in thought and images are felt but not seen. Feeling suitably fulfilled with my philosophical musings, I turned my attention back to the journey at hand. My wandering came to an end as I drew upon a large stone slab. Adorned with a black velvet blanket rest objects cast in gold, neatly arranged, purposely separated. A display, maybe? But to and from whom? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was for me. Why else would there just be a random slab with things on it? A different question arose in me. What am I expected to do? I browsed through the things. Most were foreign to me, unknown. All save for a hammer. Head chipped and worn down. This has seen some serious use. Let order be your guide. A thunderous voice spoke in a language whose words I could not understand, but the meaning was clear. I fell to my knees as a sharp ringing blasted through my head. A throbbing and hateful pain radiated from the hand that held the hammer to my head. In agony, I screamed. No sound escaped my lips. The world around me faded away to darkness, and I writhed upon the stone slab. Swirling colors took form from beyond the vacuum of non-existence. Eyes of blazing embers stared into my existence. Howling winds tore at my flesh and threatened to remove me from my stony crib. You will become my vessel, my champion. Greatness will cower before you. Order will be upheld. With each word, my body contorted and bent. Drums erupting in cacophonous dirges gripped at my skull. There would be no relief from this agony, something growing, rending my head open like a seed. Without a will of my own, I gripped the hammer until my knuckles turned white like bone. Chaos breathes within you. To be pure, you must be cleansed. Remove the seed of disorder so that greatness can fill you to the brim. The sickening soft crunch of bone as I brought the hammer down upon my temple. An ecstasy as blood trickled down my face and fell as rain upon the hungry stone. With each blow, voices chanted in unison of order and perfection. My eyes burned as hot coals in my skull. My arm was no longer my own. It was an extension of whatever this voice was. I was but marble before an artist. My eyes were coals, marble. Cracked. Was perfected. I awoke.